A shark the size of a school bus. Teeth bigger than your hand. Jaws that could crush a car. This thing made great whites look like goldfish. And then one day, it just vanished. What could kill the most powerful predator that ever lived? 3 million years ago, if you jumped into the ocean, you were basically jumping into a nightmare because the oceans back then belonged to one creature, the Megalodon. This wasn't just another big shark. This was a killing machine that grew up to 60 feet long and weighed over 50 tons. That's heavier than 10 elephants combined. Its bite force was somewhere between 24,000 to 40,000 pounds per square inch. To put that in perspective, a great white shark bites down with about 4,000 pounds of force. A megalodon could bite down 6 to 10 times harder. It could literally bite a whale in half, and it did. For over 20 million years, nothing in the ocean could touch it. It was the king, the apex predator of apex predators. But then something happened, something that even the megalodon couldn't survive. So here's the question. How does the most powerful predator in the history of the ocean just disappear? I'm not talking about a slow decline over hundreds of millions of years like the dinosaurs. The megalodon went extinct relatively quickly. Around 3.5 million years ago, it was still hunting in oceans all over the world. And then within maybe a few 100,000 years, it was gone, completely wiped out. No more megalodons, ever. And scientists have been trying to figure out why for decades. Because whatever killed the megalodon had to be serious. This wasn't some weak creature that got outcompeted. This was a monster that ate whales for breakfast. So what went wrong? To understand how the megalodon died, we need to understand how it lived. And the megalodon lived better than just about any predator ever. It first showed up around 23 million years ago, during a time called the early Miocene. Back then, the oceans were warm, really warm, and they were full of food. Whales were everywhere. Big whales, small whales, slow whales. The megalodon didn't care. It ate them all. Scientists have found whale bones with megalodon bite marks all over them. These aren't little scratches either. These are massive gouges where the shark just ripped chunks of meat and bone right off the whale's body. Some whale fossils have been found with their fins completely bitten off. The megalodon would attack from below, going straight for the fins or the tail to stop the whale from swimming away. Then it would circle back and finish the job. And the megalodon wasn't picky about where it hunted. Fossils have been found on every continent except Antarctica. It lived in warm coastal waters, open oceans, everywhere. It was adaptable, it was smart, and it was huge. Baby megalodons were already bigger than most adult sharks today. When they were born, they were around 6 to 7 feet long. That's already the size of a human. And they grew fast. By the time a megalodon was a teenager, it was already 15 to 20 feet long and hunting on its own. Adults could reach up to 60 feet, though most were probably around 50 feet. Either way, that's massive. And that size came with benefits. Bigger body means more fat storage. More fat storage means you can go longer without food. The megalodon could probably survive for weeks or even months between meals. It didn't need to hunt every day. It just needed to find one big whale, take it down, and it was good for a while. But here's the thing. That size also came with a cost. A creature that big needs a lot of food. A megalodon probably needed to eat around 2,500 pounds of food every single day just to maintain its body weight. That's over a ton of meat every day. And when you need that much food, you're completely dependent on your prey. If something happens to the whales, you're in trouble. And that's exactly what happened. Around 5 to 3 million years ago, the Earth started cooling down. This period is called the Pliocene, and it marked the beginning of a series of ice ages. The polar ice caps started growing, glaciers formed, ocean temperatures dropped. And when ocean temperatures drop, everything changes. Cold water holds more oxygen than warm water. That's good for some animals, but it also changes ocean currents. It changes where nutrients flow, it changes where fish gather, and it changes where whales go.
As the oceans cooled, a lot of whale species started migrating. They moved toward the poles where cold water brought up nutrients from the deep ocean. These nutrients fed plankton. Plankton fed small fish fed bigger fish, and all of that fed the whales. But here's the problem. The Megalodon couldn't follow them. The Megalodon was adapted for warm water. It had a huge body that worked great in tropical and subtropical oceans, but in cold water, that body became a problem. Keeping a 50-foot body warm and freezing water takes a lot of energy, way more energy than the Megalodon could get from hunting. So while the whales moved to colder waters, the Megalodon got stuck in the shrinking warm water zones. And it gets worse. The whales that stayed in warm water started changing too. They got faster. They got smarter. Evolution doesn't stop just because there's a giant shark around. In fact, having a giant shark around is exactly why evolution speeds up. The slower, dumber whales got eaten. The faster, smarter ones survived and had babies. Over millions of years, the whales that lived in Megalodon territory became harder and harder to catch. They developed better echolocation to detect predators. They started traveling in groups to protect each other. They became more agile. And the Megalodon, as powerful as it was, started struggling. But even that might not have been enough to wipe out the Megalodon. Because here's where things get really interesting. The Megalodon didn't just lose its prey, it also got competition. Around the same time the oceans were cooling down, a new predator showed up, the great white shark. Now, great whites are way smaller than Megalodons. A big great white is maybe 20 feet long. That's less than half the size of an adult Megalodon. So you'd think the Megalodon would just eat them and move on. But that's not what happened. Because great whites didn't compete with Megalodons for adult whales. They competed for baby whales. And that's huge. See, the Megalodon had a strategy. It would hunt big adult whales because it had the size and power to take them down. But it also relied on smaller prey when big whales weren't around. Young whales, seals, large fish. That was the backup food supply. But great whites were perfect for hunting that exact same prey. They were smaller, faster, and more efficient. They didn't need as much food. They could survive in colder water. And they started eating all the baby whales and seals that the Megalodon needed to survive between big hunts. Suddenly, the Megalodon wasn't just losing its main food source, it was losing its backup plan too. And then came the breaking point. Around 3.5 million years ago, something big happened. The Isthmus of Panama formed. You know that thin strip of land that connects North and South America? That didn't always exist. For millions of years, there was a gap there. Ocean water flowed freely between the Atlantic and the Pacific. But then the Earth's tectonic plates shifted, land rose up, and suddenly the two oceans were cut off from each other. This changed everything. Ocean currents that used to flow between the Atlantic and Pacific were blocked. Water temperatures shifted, nutrient flows changed, and the marine ecosystems that the Megalodon depended on collapsed. Whales that used to migrate through that gap couldn't anymore. Food sources that used to be reliable disappeared. And the Megalodon, already struggling with cooling oceans and new competition, couldn't adapt fast enough. It needed warm, whale-rich waters to survive, and those waters were disappearing. Some scientists think the final blow came from the loss of nursery areas. See, Megalodons needed specific places to give birth. Warm, shallow coastal waters where baby Megalodons could grow up without getting eaten by other predators. But as sea levels changed and coastlines shifted, a lot of those nursery areas vanished. Without safe places to raise their young, Megalodon populations couldn't recover. The babies died, the adults got old, and eventually there were no more Megalodons left. So what killed the Megalodon? It wasn't one thing, it was everything. The oceans cooled down and the whales migrated away. The whales that stayed got faster and smarter. Great white sharks moved in and ate all the backup food. The Isthmus of Panama formed and wrecked the ocean currents, and the nursery areas disappeared. The Megalodon was hit from every direction at once, and even though it was the most powerful predator in the ocean, it couldn't survive all of that. Because here's the thing about being an apex predator. You're at the top of the food chain. But that also means you depend on everything below you. If the fish disappear, the whales starve. If the whales starve, the sharks starve. And the bigger you are, the harder you fall. The Megalodon needed a perfect environment to survive. Warm water, tons of whales, safe nursery areas. When that environment changed, the Megalodon had nowhere to go. It was too specialized, too dependent. And in the end, that's what killed it. Not another predator, not a meteor, just a changing world that it couldn't keep up with. The monster shark that ruled the seas for 20 million years was gone, and the oceans have never seen anything like it since.